Welcome to this episode of the Financial Incline. I'm your host, John Bobart. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jeff Annis. Jeff is a lifelong serial entrepreneur from Augusta, Georgia. He started his first business as a junior in high school, and he has owned or co-owned 10 different businesses from 1974 to 2022. The bulk of our conversation revolves around Jeff's time at Advanced Services. Advanced Services is a pest and termite control company focusing on residential customers. In 2022, Jeff decided to sell his business, and we talk about when he knew he was ready to sell, what he was looking for during the process of selling, and also how he was able to prepare his business to receive a top dollar offer for his company. So if you're a business owner and you're potentially looking at retiring or selling your business within the next couple of years, I highly encourage you to listen to my conversation with Jeff Annis. Hey, Jeff, how's it going this morning?
Great morning.
That it looks like it. I can tell by the view behind you. It looks like it's a beautiful day down there in Augusta.
Yeah, it's always, we're 12 months spring in Augusta.
Can't beat that. Yeah. Cincinnati, it's normally about it's cold. You get about a week of nice weather, and then it's humid and hot. So, yep. So I'm a little jealous.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So, Jeff, so I gave a brief introductory for you, but for those that are listening in and watching the video, would you mind sharing just a little bit of background about you before we kind of dive into your career and the process that you went through for selling your business?
Well, my background really is that I was a horrible student. I couldn't wait to get out of college, so I got out of it halfway through my sophomore year. At that time, I'd already been operating a business for 3 years that I started as a high school junior. It was a sailboat business where we sold and delivered sailboats. And that was based, out of my love for sailing. So I always wanted to, I just like being a business. I found out that I had this yearning to find someone who needed something and then get it to them, whether you're giving it to them or selling it to them. So that's always what I just had a love to do. Then my mom and dad had a pest control company, and they got divorced. And then my father died kind of prematurely. In fact, when I was in junior high school, he died. By the time I got into my sophomore year in college, my mom was struggling a little bit running her business. It was a small pest control company, about 10 people. And I went to work for her part-time while I had the sailboat company too. In fact, we combined the businesses, the locations, so that I could help her and still do the other one. So we did that. About 1985, about 10 years later, basically, my mom wanted to sell the business, so she did. And I worked for the new owners for about 8 or 9 months and hated working for somebody. I hated being told how we do it because I knew how I wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been there?
I've been there. Yes. Yeah. Whether it be in sports or in business. Yes.
Both. Yeah. Both.
Yep.
Everybody that probably is a business owner or someone who's far up and running a business has had that, because we always wanted to be the one that was determining our direction and our vision for what's going to happen next. So right. I left them and started my own from scratch in my hometown. And we literally, just like anybody would do with CPA or any lawyer, anybody, you get one client one day, and that's your first client. And you make $100 and you buy some chickens and you go home and eat them. And really, it sounds funny, but that's kind of the existence for the first few years for me. Mm-hmm. But we had a fan following. I had a fan following. I didn't know it. So very quickly, I filled myself up with work where I had to hire a part-time guy, then a full-time guy. I had somebody answer my phone for me that was doing it as a favor. And then they said, this can't be a favor anymore. I'm talking to 19 people every day. And so fast forward, we got the company going, went through all that growth and all that horror and that you do when you grow a business. Luckily, pest control is a low capitalization business. We never had to have $100,000 in the bank to buy something to operate. We started the thing with $2,000 to $5,000 really. And wow. So, yeah. And So we built it up and up and up, and we scraped by. We were kind of typical growth oriented. If we made $1,000 one week, we spent 900 of it on doing something so we could do more business the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kept on doing that. We did that for 36 years, and we built the company up to being really at the tip of pest control companies in America, especially if you pull out the segments that it's not publicly traded, or the very, very large family-owned companies, which there are some very, very large family-owned pest control companies,
Right.
hundreds of millions of dollars worth of pest control companies out there in the family-owned world. So we built ourselves up, and then suddenly we got to the point where I determined that it was time for us to go, time for me to go, at least.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So great. So I appreciate that story. So a couple questions then, really as you're building that career. So one of the things, that I have questions on as far as scaling the business, how did you go about determining when to hire, who to hire, what type of characteristics? I mean, what were you looking for from that perspective?
Well, when to hire, what I always did was, and y'all, I'm just going to give you a general statement is while you're building the company to a reasonably good size, you hire behind because you're stupid. And you think you're going to go broke because you have too many people on the staff. And so I ran from behind for the first 15 years out of the 36. I always was behind. Okay. And I woke up every morning with that gnawing that how are we going to get it done today or this week? I in my business advisement days, I recommended highly against hiring from behind. Who wants to go into the last 2 minutes of the Super Bowl and you're down a touchdown? And right. I did that for 15 years. I just got used to the adrenaline. I think cortisol was my best drug. I just stayed jacked all the time. So,
right.
But that was the big thing, was I figured out as soon as I couldn't literally stand it anymore, get one more thing done, then I started hiring. Mm-hmm. And that back then, 20 years ago, by the way, you could decide to hire somebody and have a good person working for you in about 24 to 48 hours.
Right.
Now, 24 to 48 years till you get somebody working for you.
That's right. So, a little bit harder nowadays. Yes.
I saw that morphing going along, but then as soon as we got to where we had some cash flow, and I can't emphasize enough, the only way we survived was we always had positive cash flow. We never had a negative cash flow month, week, quarter, year. We always grew. We also always maintained some of our capital in the bank. So we knew we would never be struggling where we couldn't afford to hire ahead. And by hiring ahead, we were able to be a little pickier about who we hired. And that became the second key.
Yeah.
How do you determine who to hire? What we did is we basically developed in our own minds, and initially it was just me, to get my second technician, let's say, I looked for someone just like me, someone who's obsessed with customer service and obsessed with being on time and obsessed with delivering what they were supposed to deliver to the client. And I can teach anybody how to kill bugs and termites and, trap a rat. I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that easy. But I can't give them a love for customer satisfaction or a love for their fellow man that makes them want to drive to see a customer smile and be happy.
Right.
So, then as we went forward, every time we wanted to hire somebody, we thought about what the replica we would buy from would be. Well, if that is a secretary or a bookkeeper or somebody to answer the phone or any job we had, we said, what does the perfect one look like in terms of their traits and attributes, desires, where they're from and where they're going. And we just went with that. And now I probably would be remiss if I didn't tell you that as we grew especially because of the fact that we had a very, very good ability to pick the right people for those jobs.
Right.
And that ability, now I've determined this over many years. In fact, especially since I've left there, people say to me all the time, your staff was the only reason we really loved your company was because your staff was always top notch and they were the best. And that really came to light in the fact that we had such a high retention rate on staff, and that led to a very, very high retention rate on customers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
But that's how we were scaling, was we were scaling with picking the best staff and the best customers, because we only picked customers that we wanted to do business with.
Right.
And that was critical to scaling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That had to be somewhat difficult, like you said, hiring essentially your replacement, right? So finding somebody that can be as passionate about the business, as passionate about the customer, and as driven as you are. Explain to me, I mean, how difficult was that? Was that a hard task for you to go about finding that person?
Well, I think that it's going to help you if you have a knack, or you have an intuition about people. If you're intuitive about people, and if you can talk to somebody and you can meet them, if you can get to know them quickly, but you have to have this great intuition. My friend has a restaurant, bunch of restaurants, and people go there because they love his staff. They love the servers.
Mm-hmm.
And a server could walk in and be walking towards him, is there for a job interview. And before they get to him, before they get 6 feet away, he knows if they're going to be working there or not.
Yeah.
And, because I've hired about 500 people, but he's hired thousands of people. And
yeah,
he's never been wrong. He's never been wrong. And to this day, when I go, he just sold his company and moved to blissfully live in Savannah on a big golf and tennis farm, so to speak.
Yeah.
And to this day, people still go to that restaurant chain because they know exactly the way they're going to feel when they're greeted by the greeter and the staff. And that's what I did. I just had an intuition for it, just like my friend's name is Henry Shear, and he's a legend in our world. But if you have a good intuition for that, that's going to really help you. If you're the owner of the company and your intuition for that is horrible, please don't be the person in charge of making that hiring decision, going through the hiring process.
Right.
Because I was good at the intuition part, but as we grew, I had people working with me that were great at the technicalities and following the functions and doing the steps in the system to get them hired and get them trained, onboarded. So my part was they call me the last 20 years. I was a spokesmodel.
Hey, you had the pretty face. You're more than a pretty face, though, right?
People used to mistake Tom Selleck in me.
Yeah.
You know that. So, but yeah, it was. We also determined early on. I got to tell my fellow business owners and prospective business owners early on, you have to figure out what you are. And we were 15, 20 years into the business before my team told me who I was, and then that's what I was, and we did much better.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Out business development, kind of the face of the company, so to speak. Well, that's great. So I wanted to turn things now to, kind of where I wanted to spend the bulk of the conversation is around kind of that selling the business, kind of the transaction, the exit, whatever term you want to use for that. So when did you know that you wanted to sell?
Well, there was an election in 2020. I don't know if you knew that.
I think I heard about that. Yes. Yep.
I heard somebody talking about it on the radio.
Right.
So my family we're a bunch of political geeks from ever and ever. I'm in. And so the next day after that, I got I never did anything that quickly, but I sat down with my other 2 or 3 key people, and we talked about it, and we said, gee whiz, what's this future look like? And we always dealt in a system where we always conferenced about, is this a short, medium, or long-term thing we're talking about here?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we looked at the short term, and we said, well, what's the effects of this new administration going to be? And we're realistic. We know that nobody gets everything they promised to do when they were running for president. Thank goodness, or not. But we said, we looked at the short, medium, and long term. and we looked at the economic cycle over the next, what it's going to be for the next 8 to 12 years. And we said, well, in the short term, the next 4 years are going to be extremely, extremely challenging. And so, and in particular, for the people like myself, in fact, my team was the first ones to alert me to, Jeff, your business just dropped in value by 35%. And I said, well, that's okay. Well, the promise that somebody made, I'm not going to mention their name. It's like Lord Voldemort, but promising to double my capital gains and increase my taxes is not the way to make me look at wanting to stay as a business owner for the next several years. And in my view of the long-term economic situation, and that of the experts that I rely upon, was that we've got some real interesting times between now and my 75th birthday. And at the time I was 65.
Okay.
So we're looking at that. And we said, well, hey, Jeff, what are you doing when you're 75? And I said, well, I would rather be looking in the rearview mirror at owning a business when I'm 75. And I'm afraid that if I hang in there till I'm age 75 or 77, that I won't, first of all, I won't be as likely to have a long future after I sell. But the other thing is I might actually end up selling from a worse perspective. And I'll be selling from a wagon that might be missing a wheel or two. Right. It's hard to sell a wagon when there's only 2 wheels on it, especially if both the wheels are on the left side. So, so we and the big listen, all of my closest advisors, I was the only person in my company. I was the only owner. I had no owners, I had no partners. All of my team members, because of how we brought them in and how we raised them, everybody on my team felt like they were an owner because they were so directly connected in their life satisfaction to the success of the enterprise. So they even recommended that we bail.
Wow.
I mean, now everybody that owns a business, and they'll deny it because they want to talk about money. Really, a lot of their heart is around what happens to my people.
Right.
If I leave, if I sell them to, Satan. Well, the fact is, I'm a founder owner. And if you founded your company and you own it, I just want you to know that you are the nightmare.
Yeah.
How
so?
I'm sorry. Fact.
Yeah. Right.
So I looked at that and I said, well, and only in the moments when I had a moment to breathe about it was what I can do and what I can bring, my leadership ability and my business vision and my acumen for what to do and how to do it. That has stopped growing a long time ago. And I thought if we picked the right buyer, we would allow everyone in my company to upgrade. They could go from the old theoretical Chevrolet to the Cadillac, or the Toyota to the Lexus. And we were probably already Lexus and we're probably already Cadillac, but still the horizon was much broader for these people who were mainly in their 40s and 50s. They were in their late 30s, 40s, and early 50s. So they had a long future ahead of them. And I wanted to see them have more opportunity.
Right. Well, great. So then how far in advance did you start preparing for the sale?
From the time we really decided to do it until we did it, the start to finish was about 150 days.
Okay.
Now, that would not have been possible except for that the guy that ended up brokering my business for me, I had known from associations for many, many, many years. And so starting this process was so simple with him because, first of all, he knew we would never sell the company. I was never going to sell my company. Yeah. Founder, owner, nightmare, never sell the company. Okay. So that's what I was doing. So when I talked to him one day and I said, we have decided to sell the company, he said, am I talking to you? Right. Jeff, give me this. Hey, Jeff, give me the safe word. So wasn't being held hostage or anything. So what happened with him was, though, and I found this out after we started the process, he said, well, good. All these people call me from all over the world saying, hey, what about Advance? We want to buy that. And he says, I always tell them, that's funny. That's not happening.
Right.
And let's talk about somebody else. He and I would conference with each other about companies that could be buying or could be selling. And so he and I were deep friends and had a long, long relationship. So he was so happy to be able to talk to those people and say, you've got a shot.
Right. Great.
And so so the short term was fear of taxes. If we kept the business, the medium term between now and selling in the future was going to be, we had already seen what was happening in the labor market, the human resources market. We'd already seen that happening. And we weren't happy with the trend. We thought that trend was very negative.
Yeah.
And the long-term economic cycle, just everything is this way.
Right.
Everything's a cycle.
Yeah.
And I was a Vistage chair, and Vistage chairs get the leading edge. And I'm not a Vistage chair anymore. This is not a commercial for Vistage.
Yeah.
Although you all ought to be a Vistage, but it's not. But nothing's for everybody, But we were privy to some of the most awesome economic prognostications and forecasts that's ever been. And when the thing hit in 2006, 7, and 8, all of the people that were involved in that were going, yeah, I know, we've been ready for 3 years. They have this great ability they hire soothsayers, I think. But so we had, especially the chairs, we had the tip top most advantage with that. But what happens is people that understand the economic cycles know that these macro trends are worldwide,
right? And
they're not really debatable. I mean, they're things that happen that jump up and down, but things have been jumping up and down in this cycle forever.
Right.
So that was our long-term view, was that.
Yeah. And trying to picture, kind of what's going on in the world, right? So you said it was right after the election, which obviously that was the COVID year. You had the stimulus money, you had the Federal Reserve coming in and essentially, launching a bazooka into the economy, PPP loans, really throwing everything they could at it. They were shutting down businesses. And yeah, like I said, you had the stimulus loans, you still had probably, the people on unemployment, and a lot of people, like you mentioned, staying at home, not working, getting paid more potentially to not be working.
But that grew the value of my business about 20%, by the way, because when all my competitors stopped.
Yeah.
We did not. We are officially, in fact, probably the day after the pandemic got cranked up, our governor and our legislature and a lot of states are this way. They said, well, we're going to make sure everybody understands there's something called the essential businesses that can't stop. And so, we're part of the whole health and sanitation and environmental protection of all the people, restaurants, homes, businesses, factories, places that produce pharmaceuticals. They get closed down if there's a bug in the wrong place. So guess who never missed a lick? We never stopped operating. Now, something that we did, a lot of things that we did in operating our business, we did for our own reasons that turned out to be really big and important. We had decentralized our systems. So anyone that worked on our admin staff and in our office could be at their home, and they could pop up their laptop and cut on their cell phone. And that was like being in our office. We invented that because we had people who, mainly women, who were going to have babies that were on our team. Yep. And they said, I don't want to come to the office. I don't leave my baby. Yeah. And so we said, well, don't be leaving your baby. Be opening your laptop and cutting on your cell phone and logging onto our phone system, and you can work from there. So we invented work from home about 15 years before the pandemic.
Wow.
For our office staff and our admin.
Mm-hmm.
And other than the use of Zoom so much, they were all already set up then to totally function if we closed the building. We closed the building somewhat because we just had a staff. We had people on the site because some little old ladies like to walk in and hand over the bill. And we also had to have our site operative because that's where our people came and went from. But we'd already set up our technicians to be work from home. They woke up, they popped their laptop open, they downloaded their route for the day, they put it on their handheld computer, and they jumped in the truck and drove off. So
Right.
we did that because we wanted to give our people more time at home and get more done on the job than having them go driving back and forth to work in their pest control truck.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the little things that we did along the way just to be smart that turned out to be a huge advantage. When all my competitors quit showing up for work for 6 weeks and they had a bug, guess who they called?
They call you. Yeah.
And we answered just like normal. We didn't do anything differently except for that we had to customize the way that we approach the customers person to person and we come into their house. We didn't come in their house, which we never did. We usually did all our pest control for residential on the outside anyway.
Right.
Our profits and our growth, everything skyrocketed. Our cash flow skyrocketed during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, great. So when you were looking, you're considering selling, what were you looking for most in a potential buyer?
Well, the main thing I wanted some people who were not jerks that I could work with, because due diligence is the most painful thing a business owner ever will endure. The due diligence process can be very, very difficult, and many, many people don't survive that. And that's okay. I mean, that means that buyer and you weren't meant to be together. But my books were so clean and my financial side was so smooth and so documentable and worked so well that it made it where that part was so easy. In fact, I'll tell you, I wouldn't have been able to do it if we didn't have all that in place. But so we searched for the buyers. We wanted someone who was big enough to pay all the money up front. We did not want any earnouts or buyouts, or we didn't want any of that mumbo jumbo. We wanted to walk away with the money that we were going to have.
Yep.
And the broker said, well, you might get a little less. And then it turned out we did not get any less, because the competition for our book of business was so vicious that it didn't matter. We could have told them that they all had to come to the closing, naked with wearing a pink tutu on their head, and they would have been there like that. It's just that's just we were a highly sought acquisition, and we also restricted it to. Actually, we said not this. There was the no-go list.
Right.
No, not them or them. And it turned out to be, though, that the ones that we wanted to look at us and we wanted to have look at us happened to be EU-based companies, 2 EU-based companies.
Okay.
And between those two, they also had very vast differences in their profiles. And we picked the one, the profile of which was more of an up-and-comer profile, and one where their other acquisitions had been very smooth, and where the people 2 or 3 years later were still happy. And luckily, I knew these people that these different folks had sold and bought. So I was able to get firsthand about that. So that helped me. It finally got down to 2 guys. I call them guys, two big major companies. And it settled on the one who finally called in and said, I'm tired of bidding. I'm going to offer you this for 60 minutes. And he said, they gave us this bid with the purpose of stopping this bidding. Okay. And I got the phone call. I think I was probably in my car. And the bidder that I wanted to win had offered a bust out thing. And so I said yes. But then I also maintained in the contract to sell that up until the moment that they did the wire transfer, I could stop it, and everybody walked away not owing anybody anything.
Wow, that's rare.
Yeah, I call that the he got the willies provision.
Yeah.
They had that too. They didn't
Okay.
they weren't obligated. I wasn't obligated. Um,
Mhm.
Eventually you get a lot invested in the due diligence, and it's unlikely that you'd stop it.
Right. Right. Yeah. The money between the lawyers and the accountants and everybody else. So,
You're right. Well, the 5 or 6 key people that you have involved in this thing, um, they they're really there. If you're the business owner, don't forget that they're there to help you. You
mhm.
know, that's what their job is. And I had a great team. And all the people on my team were people that I'd already been working with for years and years.
Right.
So nobody was getting introduced to Jeff for the first time.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So when you were going through this process, did you ahead of the sale, did you do any sort of planning even on like the personal side and try to factor in what type of number you were looking for or what you thought would be, the amount that you needed to retire comfortably on? Did you have that number ever in the back of your mind?
I did. I came to that number though by, if I was your client, I would start with you. Now, in fact, before I even thought about deciding to sell, I would start with the person in my life who is in your role. That's how I started.
Right.
And because I'd been working with them for a long time, it was very easy to have that conversation. And so I made sure that I had everything organized so that if I got the money, you heard me say before probably that there's walkaway money, and there's walkaway money and go to the Ritz Carlton, and there's walkaway money and go to the Comfort Inn. Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to walk away and go buy the Ritz Carlton. So,
Yes,
so,
that's the Brinks
so
truck.
yeah, I wanted the Brinks truck closing.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we looked at the kind of the thing about your needs for the next 40 years, your needs and wants, and then your needs and wants and options. Meaning, are you gonna start a foundation with $2 million for your favorite charities to take from? Or are you gonna not have that? Are you gonna
Right.
schedule distributions to your family members? What are you gonna do with all this dough? And so
Right.
what's the purpose of that? Well, we went to my all the way up, and we ended up getting about double what I ever dreamed possible. So
Wow.
that made it, because we were so unique, and everything about our situation was unique. Don't think you're going to get that, but I tried to put myself in a position where the truth is the truth and the market's the market. I'm a capitalist.
Right.
You may notice.
Yes.
Um, and so you're either on the right side of that or the downside in the capitalist cycle. And and I had an idea of what I wanted to have happen, but I'd already mapped out my future the last 40 years financially before I entered into the process.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So great. So it sounds like you had somebody and you had the plan in place, kind of had an idea on the number, and then essentially it came down to, okay, how high could you potentially get that number?
Right.
Which is good. So, in you mentioned a financial advisor. What other professionals did you have that were on your team? Obviously, you mentioned the people that worked for you within the company. So kind of both inside and outside the company. Who was your team that you were leaning on?
Well, I had my fractional CFO was very important, and that's Mackie McNeil at Mackie Advisors, and she was my fractional CFO for 10 years before we did the whole thing. That was critical to have her advice and help. And we also have, we had the attorney, but the attorney that ended up doing my business attorney for closing happened to also be the guy whose father had gotten me my first estate and trust plan 25 years earlier. And I'd been familiar with him and his dad and his firm, and they had done giant business closings too.
Okay.
Way bigger. They'd done them 10 times bigger than mine. And they'd also done ones that were very much smaller than mine too. So they had done every size possible you could imagine. And it made it where it wasn't that hard for them because they weren't having to learn the machinations of what was going to happen and what they were going to go through.
Right.
So having my attorney happen to fit that. Most people need to get what I call a sale attorney.
Right.
You need to get an attorney who does transactions. Trust me. Don't let the guy that does your plumbing should not do your electrical work.
Right.
Thoroughly. So that was important. I also, I had a lot of involvement even with my realtor because he said, the folks who get in my company were going to lease my building. And so I had to get professional work done about my lease and quality, all that stuff that went with that. That was important. So really my fractional CFO, my internal CFO, my CPA. Now my CPA is also the one that does a lot of small business ownership CPA work. So that was important. But that was basically the team. My spiritual side team was my financial advisor and my spouse.
Yeah.
And my 2 or 3 key people at work, and turned out to be my whole leader team at work, my top 6, 7 people. They ended up being intimately involved in the due diligence process.
Yeah.
But everybody, believe it or not, wholesale, everybody was in favor of what I was doing. And believe it or not, they really wanted what was best for me.
Right. So it sounds like it's like you said, it seems pretty rare that you had that team already in place. Seems like you'd had been working with these people for 20, 30 years already, even your team of professionals, which is rare. And it's a great scenario to be in. Oh,
listen, if you need to build your team all the time for anything that might come up. Don't build your team just to get you to don't build your team to get you to the playoffs. Right. Build your team to win the playoffs and win the championship.
Yep.
That's what you've got to do in your business life. And the future is out there. It's coming whether you want it or not.
Right. And then you mentioned the kind of the structure of the deal. It sounds like it was a all cash at closing, no seller note, really no earn out, things like that. So it was your plan at all post close? Were you planning to stay on with the company, or what was your plan from that perspective?
When we first got to the point where it looks like we were going to have a deal, a couple of the guys from the buyer came, and we had one of those 3-hour luncheons with my 2 top people and me and those 2. Yep. And in fact, it was the person that came to that was a really, 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 really big, important, like it means business if Lee Iacocca comes to your lunch,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So we had their top guy and they're really their second other kind of top guy. So we talked about that, and I told them because they asked me how long I wanted to stay on. And I told them that if I was their business advisor, that I would not recommend that I stay on. Yeah. Because not for 1 minute, because there's no way they're going to transition the way they need to and join in the way that they need to. If they see me there. Now I got to back up and tell you, I had not been involved in the day-to-day. I'd officially gotten out of the day-to-day about 7 or 8 years before this sale took place.
Okay.
However, everybody knew that I came to the weekly leadership team meetings. Everybody knew that I went to the quarterly leadership team meetings. Everybody knew that I did the annual meetings. They saw me at big company events and gatherings. If everybody in their families went to the baseball game, they knew I'd be there. Also, about once a week, sometimes twice a week, I'd have breakfast or lunch with one of my old team members. It could even have been a technician. I mean, it could have been anybody. Right. They all had my cell phone number. And they'd call me and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about some stuff." And by the way, they never talked to me about business. They always talked to me about something personal. But so everybody knew me, and it wasn't gonna work if people saw me.
Yeah.
Now, my top 2 people that were there at that meeting with me, that had been running the company basically for the previous 10 years, they agreed to stay, but they were vehement that they only stay till they would only commit for 6 months, and that sometime during that period of time they could talk about the future. But I knew that I knew they were not going to work 1 minute past the 6 months, and I think the main man and his buddy knew that too.
Yeah,
we had built a team that these guys could go and they could just we could flip them the keys, and the three of us could have disappeared into thin air, and that company would have been fine.
Yeah,
it would have operated.
Right.
So they got a sense for that. And my two key people they didn't need to work in my industry to have a living and have a great time. They had lives and finances and wealth outside of all that, and had developed a lot of wealth and abilities outside of working for me. They didn't care if they had a bug company or not. So,
right.
In fact, I have to give you a sentence here about this. One of the proudest things about being a business owner is when people say, I'm the first person in my family to buy a new house. I'm the first person in my family to buy a new car.
Wow.
I'm the first person in my family to send their kids to college. I'm the first person in my family. All these things that I learned that people gained from working on our team was the best part of having been a business owner.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Truly making a difference, in those people's lives, which is great.
Yep.
So, but Jeff, I know you've got to run, and this has been fantastic. It seems like you had the team in place with your business. You had the technology in place as well with, the work from home. I know you said you got your books and records, so you had your finances all in place as well. You were responsive. You stayed open when when your competitors were closing. I'm sure all of that led to, a multiple expansion when it came time to sell and exit the business. So last question before I let you go, is there anything that you would have changed either through running the business or when you went to sell the business and get out of it? Is there anything that you would have potentially done differently?
Not really. All the changes that we made and all the progress we made over the last 10 years, every time we made one of those changes, we always said, wish we had done this 10 years sooner.
Yeah.
So
right.
What I would have changed mindset is going to go to, in speaking to people that operate and own businesses, is to say this: you can change too quickly, and you can also very much fail from not changing fast enough. And I think what I would do is I would have been paying a lot more attention to my change needle and said, well, is this a go, a no-go, go now, go slow, go moderate? I would have spent a lot more time. My difference would have been I spent a lot more time gauging those and not, you don't want to get in front of your skis. And my other term I called it was, if you're a sailor and you're on the ocean and your boat's leaking, you don't get too far from land. But if you don't get too far from land, you don't really end up going anywhere. So if you have something that's leaking, fix it so you can venture off into the real big discoveries that your business can do. Mm-hmm. Too many people are they're doing what the other 80 people in their industry also did. And we didn't make any progress or make any great money on anything where we were the 70th one doing it. Right. So we went on an adventure, and every time we decided to invent something that was new and we were the only ones, we flourished in every respect. So doing differently, I think we did so well that I can't say we should have done anything differently, but I would just take the business in the vision direction that you pick, that interests you, and then make sure that it works. Be on the cutting edge, probably try to stay away from the bleeding edge, and you'll be fine. But owning a business is no fun if you're not having fun and you're not getting what you need in terms of your spiritual side of getting what you need to make you feel great every day.
Yep. Well, great, Jeff. This was very valuable. I definitely appreciate the time. And like I said, this was great for you to share your story. And then there's a lot of business owners out there that can, use this advice, implement this in their business as they're running it. So, Jeff, we appreciate the time this morning.
Glad to be with you, and good luck with what you're doing. I appreciate you and your role that you play to make people's money safe and make their future understandable for them. I appreciate the role that you're in.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.